All right. The day has come. A day we never thought would come, but we are 48 hours away from what we're calling the mega fight. Undisputed Welterweight Championship of the World. And dare I say, is this fight going to crown the number one pound for pound fighter in the world? Ring lineal, everything on the line. This Saturday, you are going, my friend.
I am. I leave tomorrow.
Errol Spence Jr., Terence Crawford, Undisputed Welterweight Championship of the World. By the way, we are back.
Guard your grill.
Guard your grill boxing.
Absolutely.
Roberto Flack, Coltrane.
You see it. You see it.
Yes, sir.
The GOAT. Man.
Oh, man. Yo, can you believe we are like hours away? You're about to take a flight over to Vegas.
It's crazy, bro. I can't, like, it's weird, man, because it's so surreal because, you and I, we always, tap into the nostalgia of this whole thing and, how we came up watching footage. Because, listen, to be technical, we didn't really grow up in the Four King era. We just grew up, in households or had access to videos to watch old footage of the Four Kings. And that's how we kind of got an introduction to the sport. But that really wasn't our era. So although we marvel and cherish all these old fights from the Four Kings, the Aaron Pryor, Alexis Arguello type fights, the Salvador Sanchez's, the Wilfredo Benitez, the list goes on. All these great fights that are so monumental in the history. When you talk about the history of boxing, you can't talk about. There's been a lot of great fights, but those names that I just ran into. Those are staple fights. Ali Frazier, Larry Holmes, versus Tim Witherspoon. Gary Cooney was a mismatch, but James Toney, versus Michael Nunn and Roy Jones Jr. Then we're getting into our era when we started to, see these fights. But, the list goes on of these great fights. But most importantly, the Four Kings set the foundation for modern day boxing.
Right.
Not that boxing wasn't popular before that, but they turned boxing into a global phenomenon. People became statesmen and spokesmen for for Madison Avenue and corporations. These guys had corporate deals. Corporate people wanted to put their money into boxing. Like, they made it almost like a team-oriented sport. And it became bigger with the Mike Tyson era. Obviously, De La Hoya. Shout out to the documentary. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check that out. De La Hoya took it to another level. Then another guy came along by the name of Floyd Mayweather, and then took a game to a whole another level. Manny Pacquiao, we'll get into that later, came all the way down from 106 and fought all the way up to 150-something pounds at a catch weight. So Felix Trinidad, Shane Mosley. I mean, the list goes on of all these legacy fights and names. And then you had this, Terence Bud Crawford and Earl the Truth Spence. Both came up differently. Crawford came up through the lightweight ranks, super lightweight, and then he became a welterweight. Earl Spence, I believe, started his career at 154, but mostly as a welterweight, mainly, most of his box records is from welterweight. But Floyd Mayweather blacked his eye for the Robert Gross to Guerrero fight. They was on a collision course. Crawford moves up to welterweights, and we'll get into all how we got here. But this fight, 4 years we've been talking about this fight? God, shout out to ROD. Never thought the fight would happen. You and I both kept saying it will happen. We don't know. It's not a matter of if, it's when.
Of if, right.
It was when.
When, right.
When is now. The first
the
final press conference was yesterday. Fingers crossed. Today, right?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, nobody was injured, everything's fine. And tomorrow is the weigh-in. It's crazy.
That's what I'm saying, yo. Like, it's just like, we're here, and it's funny, I was going back through the, like I said, we're back on YouTube. Expect to see us
It
a
is
lot
on
more.
YouTube. Yep.
And I'm going to 11 months ago where we were talking about this fight, like basically on the horizon. Now, you and I are very notorious for kind of seeing, um, I guess like sometimes the light at the end of the tunnel or
Absolutely.
not. You know, been around this sport a long time, and you kind of like we always say, like do the math, and a lot of times it'll present itself for you as far as like where things usually go.
Right.
And you made a point. I never thought this fight wouldn't happen. It was when it would happen. Now look, a lot of things transpired during the proverbial lead up, just so to speak, of this fight. Because what I will say though, this fight didn't get the traditional um nurturing, I should say, that most super fights at some point get. Like, listen, Canelo Triple G, for whatever it's worth, is probably the last nurtured fight. If you understand the point of certain matchups being like made to
Right.
an inevitable, and again, shout out to HBO. We could, that's a whole other episode. But I think regardless of that, and you made a point with bringing up all these names. Terence Crawford and Errol Spence of this era,
Yes.
and the significance of this fight really for them. I mean, obviously number one, but this is going to crown really the creme de la creme of boxing, man. And the question became, and look, we haven't talked about last Tuesday, but you know we've always boxing, I guess, has been looking for the heir apparent, not to what Floyd Mayweather did business wise or anything like that. But when you look at somebody like that, is the number one fighter in boxing. And I think Saturday is one of those rare occasions where we are going to get that, along with everything, undisputed and all these things, man. And I think it's timing is everything, and
That I was getting ready to say. I think that people are caught up. Now, granted, they're both on the north side of 30, so they got better years behind them than they have in front of them. But with that being said, they're still the best at their
right,
respective weight class. Like they're still the
right,
best. They're the most accomplished and the best at their. Earl Spence, beat Sean Porter, Ugas, Danny Garcia, three of his contemporaries. He didn't fight Keith Thurman for whatever reason. So that's the only one he didn't fight. But on the other hand, technically only for really one of his contemporaries, Sean Porter, but it was due to circumstances. It wasn't, you know, it was really stuff beyond his control. It was more of a business uh elephant in the room of being on that side of the street, and a whole lot of stuff that just kind of just got in the way. He was with Top Rank, and he ended up getting out of his contract, and then he finally was able to get the fight with Sean Porter, and then after that he said I'm losing my time here. So he fights Sean Porter, right?
mm-hmm.
So after the Sean Porter
Remember,
fight,
after Sean Porter, he gets in the car accident.
he gets in a car accident. Okay, I couldn't remember the timeline.
Yeah,
Okay. So he gets in it. He gets in his car accident. He recovers from the car accident, and then he fights Danny Garcia. And then he says he wants to collect one more belt, and then he wants Terence Crawford. And like you said, it's the time, and I know everybody wants stuff, instantaneously. I want it, you want it, but sometimes stuff got to play out. There's a process,
yeah,
and we can't skip it. Sometimes the process is what it is, and I'm gonna just say this: them at 35, well, Crawford at 35 and Spence at 32. This isn't Ray Leonard and Hearns at 32, or I think Ray Leonard might have been 33. I know Hearns was 30. And they was considered over the hill when they fought in that rematch.
yeah,
This ain't
yeah.
that.
No,
It's just different.
those guys fought like way more often,
Way
and they were. I mean, think about it, man. Like, I mean, and look, you made a point earlier. Like, that's not our era. But when you think about like the fact that Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns, the first fight was they were 23 and 25 years old. You know, like
right.
that's
That's like 30 today, though. Being 25
right,
in today's
right.
boxing is closer to 30. Look, Gervonta will be 20. One could argue he's just entering the peak of his career. He'll be 29 years old.
Yeah, yeah, man.
So I think
I
people
mean,
gotta I think people kind of got over that. I think at first people were a bit grumpy, but if you're
yeah,
grumpy about this fight, I don't know what's gonna
yeah,
make you
man. I
happy.
mean,
Who
yeah,
the
yeah.
hell doesn't like this fight?
Yeah, I know, and that's kind of the thing, man. And I get it. You can't please everybody, right? There's
Yeah.
always going to be the people complaining, but I mean, this is a fight we've been asking for, and I think the fact that like we're getting it now, I'm not complaining. You know, like I think you're gonna get the best two versions of these guys that we can possibly get at this point. And look, I mean, we could go into bringing up things outside the ring that transpired, and look, do they play a part in Saturday night? Maybe, maybe not. But I think at the end of the day, both Crawford and Spence fans are equally, they make their cases, and then there's people that are split down the middle with this, which at the end of the day, man, is really why this fight is so big. Because if there was a heavy favorite here, yeah, and maybe if they were like these huge polarizing figures, and like what happened with Tank and Javante, or with Javante and Ryan, where there was a lot of glamour and glitz, but like there was a favorite, like a heavy favorite in that fight. There's not a heavy favorite in this fight. Crawford's a very, very slight favorite, but
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, and I put a post up earlier, and I think because Rada had asked me, "Do you think it's big as Trinidad and De La Hoya?" I said, "I think it's bigger because um the talent between the two guys, right?
yeah,
Don't get me wrong, De La Hoya was an extremely. We talked about this yesterday that he will
yeah,
beat a lot of guys,
yep,
but I don't know if I'm favoring De La Hoya over either. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a good fight, but I think Spencer Crawford would beat either one of those guys, in a 12-round fight. I'm talking about Trinidad and De La Hoya. I think that the skill level, the durability, unless now Trinidad is an interesting one because he had the knockout power. But I know
yeah.
Bud would definitely beat De La Hoya. I just think because he had trouble, that style he had
Be
trouble with. He had trouble
yeah,
with speed.
yeah,
He had trouble with the speed. The Trinidad one is interesting because Bud, it's been rocked before, and against a guy like Trinidad, he would have to fight. I would have to imagine he's not going to take risks that he did in other fights that he would in that fight. But
mhm,
it's one that we would have to think about. But
yeah, yeah,
it's. But with all that being said, I just think that all that's on the line. Because remember, we're no longer in the 3-belt era. We're now in the four belt era. So this is the first time this is happening.
yeah,
But it's also this is his second go around at unifying something, his
hmm,
second weight class. So
yeah,
you bring all that into the fact, you bring all that into the mix. You got to go back before that fight. You just got to go back. It's everybody that I've talked to, people that's on Instagram, celebrities, ex boxer. Tyson even said it. This is the biggest fight in 30 something years. That's what Tyson said today when he introduced him.
yeah, 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 yeah,
What's on the line? It because like even with the Trinidad and De La Hoya fight, I always knew. I said, look, if De La Hoya boxes him, that he could beat him. And
hmm.
even though he lost, but it didn't. That the style, the contrast of styles, just didn't make the fight that we wanted.
We
Where in
thought
this
right.
fight, I mean, unless some, crazy things have happened in boxing where you go into something thinking something and one guy dominates, but I just
Mm-hmm.
don't see how this is a one-sided fight. No matter
No,
who, like, I just can't see any scenario where it's a one-sided fight.
I don't either. Like, I don't either. I mean, I think it's why it's such a good matchup. I mean, I have a difficult time seeing this being. Now let me say this. Now look, we don't know. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
who what if Errol Spence runs in and tries to do a Marvin Hagler? But
exactly.
who knows?
Right.
But
It's
um,
crazy, right?
yeah, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a lot of tension today. Both camps, both
It was,
families, they're going
yeah,
at it.
it
So
was more so the families, and they even got
yeah, yeah,
irritated with the
yeah,
families, like Crawford and Bomac did.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think yeah, man. I mean, I just think this is one of those fights, man, where there's so much to pick from, and it's really the question of like how quick is this fight going to get started, and if like there's going to be nerves in the beginning, because there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah,
This is I tried to tell somebody the other day, like, Mayweather Pacquiao was a cash grab
their
because I
legacy
always
was
say,
set too already. Like that was,
yeah, they were both
yeah,
certified Hall of Famers,
yeah,
and
like
argue they already had these like marquee wins.
yeah,
This fight is the biggest fight for both guys. It would be the biggest win for both guys. It is the biggest bag for both guys. And it crowns like them like the top of the hill, and that's what I'm saying. There's so much on the line with this fight that I agree. Even with De La Hoya Trinidad, while it was a unification at welterweight, like that was really again, man. Puerto Rico, Mexico sells like
yeah,
it
right, right,
just does. It
yeah,
just always has. So they had that, but I mean, when you really think about it, and this is why this fight, like, if there's anyone to mirror. And I've said this. Other people have said like Hearns and Hagler, but I always look at this as like a Tommy Hearns and Ray Leonard kind of situation.
yeah,
As far as how like the parallels, between both. Not to say they both are like each other's like doppelganger, but um, it's kind of the big fighter against the crafty mover. Um, and I remember. Look, we remember. We weren't there, but
right,
this this was Bob Arum. There's videos of Bob Arum who was promoting
yeah,
Tommy Hearns, saying
which is
nobody's gonna beat this guy.
which
Like,
is hilarious, right?
oh, yo,
That
I'm
he's
just
still
saying.
around.
He, oh,
We'll get it. We have to touch on that because this is getting out of hand now. Like,
yo.
yeah, yeah, this is
But
yeah.
I mean, oh man, I don't know. I guess we gotta like just hop into this fight, man. I mean, look, there is
Let's
an
get into it.
undercard.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, let me go through it real quick. Just to, I mean, I don't want to disrespect them or
No,
anything, but
absolutely. And listen, Nonito Donaire and people see now. This is why you can't just write guys off. People see now that he wasn't old. It's just that in a way, it's just a
is it?
phenom.
Yeah,
And nothing to
yeah,
do with because if you think about it, Nonito actually gave him a good fight. Now the second fight was just too much, but
yeah,
the first fight, like he gave in a way a rumble.
yeah, yeah.
Nonito Donaire is an excellent fighter, bro.
Listen, man,
Who
when
never
you
lost
talk,
his speed, by the way.
say it again.
He never lost his speed.
Nah, man,
Yeah.
and the fact that he went back down in weight and was
Yeah.
still winning world titles, it's crazy. Like, but when the term all time great gets kind of thrown around at times, but I'm gonna tell you, man, like when you look at his resume and
Right.
you look at his accomplishments even further, he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, like in
Absolutely.
my opinion.
Absolutely.
But I think the card is gonna start off with yeah, it's gonna be Jesus Alejandro Ramos and Sergio Garcia from Spain, and then okay, so this is the question mark: is Isaac Cruz going to be the co-main against Giovanni Cabrera, or is it going to be Nonito Donaire and Alexander Santiago? That's a world title fight. Nonito Donaire is a known name, but what have we been saying is
No,
a
you
concern
already know.
or
You already
potential December
know,
fight?
bro. You already know who's going to be the co-main event, and we know why he's going to be the co-main event. Listen,
Right,
let's put
right,
it out
right,
there
right,
right
right,
now.
right.
Isaac
So
Pitbull Cruz is going to be the co-main event. Why? Because he will probably be Gervonta Davis' December opponent.
exactly,
I know
and
people don't want to hear that, but look, we don't kill the messenger. You know, Gervonta needs a fight to close the year out. This is a fight that's been talked about, that's been speculated. You know, Calvin Ford mentioned it a few times, and it's a closeout fight for the year for Gervonta.
yeah,
It was a fight people thought was close, and so it is what it is. So I think that's why that'll be the co-main event.
I agree 1,000%. And just as a reminder to everybody, and thank you to the pay per view guys. This pay per view is going to start at 8 p.m.
Even though I'll be on West Coast time, but I just think that these fights and that go to show you how important this fight is. We can't have this fight starting at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like
Right.
it's not fair to the people that live on the East Coast. Like you can't be, people got to get up. Some people might got to get up and go to work Sunday mornings, and
Yeah. It's just
and
yeah.
I
I
just think that fights need to get back to starting at the main event. No, what you think? 11 o'clock? It'll come on. I
yeah.
don't think it's gonna come on before then. 11
Even
o'clock, right?
11:30 is all right.
Yeah,
Like even that's all right. But like 12:45, what fight
right,
was that recently where we're like word like
bro. That was
the
the
Ryan and Tank
Ramirez
fight?
fight. Was it Ramirez? It was
No,
an
wasn't it the
ESP.
Ryan or was no? It wasn't the Ryan and Tank
What?
fight. That started earlier. Man, I
One of
forgot
those
what it was.
Ramirez fights came on at 12:45.
You know what? You're right. I think you're
Yeah,
right. Yeah, man, we can't for this, and it's smart, man. I just think in general, all the pay per views really should start at. I mean, because the thing is, listen, man, like we understand like these fights take place on the West Coast, but and again, I maybe it's an East Coast bias. I don't know, but
I
um,
mean, listen,
it
bro. 1 in the morning is. I remember Canelo and Mayweather. People, I looked around the room. People were asleep.
by
Like by the
like yeah,
fourth round, people were sleeping.
yeah,
Like
that
it's
joint
not that it
started
had
late
anything
too.
to do with the fight, even though the fight was lopsided. But it's one
Yeah,
something in the morning. Like,
I
come on,
know.
bro, that's crazy when you think about it. All right, we got to break. We got to get into this fight, man, because
Yeah, I mean, it's
it's
just
it's so many very. I was talking to Sleep before we got on here, and I was just like, yo, it's so many scenarios. The way I see this fight playing out. Originally, I'm gonna be honest, like. Originally when the fight first started, was talked about, and then even before, like Bud even talked about it. I would just be like, damn, I think Crawford is the one guy that would beat Earl Spence. I just certain things, I just saw that out of Bud and I saw from Spence. But then, like, as time go on, I feel like both fighters have really improved since the inauguration of this conversation, right? Of, of drawing up this idea of them sharing the ring, I think both has improved drastically. And the one hiccup on Bud resume obviously is the Green Machine fight. I give him the Eureka's Gamboa. I give him a pass for getting caught with that because he's a small. Look, he was a gold. People forget these people aren't bums. Like he was a gold Olympian. He was a gold medal Olympian who is short. He throw punches from awkward angles. He's fast. And, at that time, he was kind of like a little bit past his prime, but he still, he never lost his power. He just got caught with a shot. And the difference is, though, with Bud, like a Trinidad, these guys, when they get hurt, or not hurt, but rocked, you get their attention. That's troublesome for whoever hurt them because that's normally when they turn it up. But that's a sign of a great fighter is how they behave when they're in trouble, and obviously, and then, on the flip side, you got Spence, who the biggest thing that we have to really charge him against is the Ugas fight when he knocked his mouthpiece out and got caught looking for it, got caught with a two-piece. Even when he got caught without looking, because he got such a great balance, most guys probably fall from what Ugas hit him with. But the balance was just just phenomenal. This is what you have when you have this level of fighters. So you got the one guy who's known as a pressure fighter versus the other guy who's known as a guy who's a counterpuncher that can move and has agility and ability. And now here we are, literally breaking this fight down. Keys to victory.
Yeah, I mean it's there. I mean you said a lot. I mean I think with Terence Crawford. Well, I'll start with him. I mean he's come up from lightweight, like you mentioned before. He became undisputed at 140. Didn't have a decorated like career, so to speak, at welterweight. Is it concerns just those key names that Errol Spence happened to get, with the
Yeah,
likes of Danny Garcia, and neither of them fought Sean Porter, but between both guys, you could look at Spence and say, okay, he fought these guys and the recognizable names at 147. And look, we could get into the whys and things as such, but that's again another
right.
show.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you made a point, man. I like, Crawford. Well, Crawford's been at welterweight since like 2017, 2018. And I think it's safe to say he's acclimated to the weight. I mean,
Six years.
he
That's
doesn't
6 years.
look like a 140 pounder anymore, so to speak. And and look, Spence too is look. We've been saying it for a while, man. He's a big boy. He
Yeah.
cuts down a lot to make 147. We're seeing it like at the
Yeah.
press conference.
This is it. Yeah.
You know, um, this is again like this is like cliche, but like this is a tricky fight to really like map out and figure out how this is gonna play out, because there's a lot of scenarios that could play out. We've seen, okay, Errol Spence, he he has different dimensions to his game, but like you could look at Errol Spence, like for the most part, a lot of his fights, and you say, okay, he's like you said, like he I don't say seek is to destroy, but he's a pressure fighter, and he throws in volume, and his mo at the end of the day is to break you down,
Yeah.
whether he
That's it.
takes you out
No
or not.
secret.
Like that
No
seems to be
secret.
like his mo. Like that's
Yeah.
his fight, his best way. And with Terence Crawford, I think because we've seen him in situations where he's been under adversity, like you mentioned the Mean Machine fight, mentioned the Gamboa fight. It's allowed us to see like different dimensions of his game when things like that happen, or when things aren't really going his way, and we see like this little subtle change at times. It's not all the same. He does it differently. He did it with Kell Brook. I think he did it once with Sean Porter, a few times with Sean Porter, and the thing with him is he crazy enough. He's a smaller guy, and I don't know. This may or may not show up in the fight tomorrow, but he's ironically got a longer reach than Errol Spence by like
Mm-hmm.
2 inches. Um, and you talk we talk about power, and that again, like who's the bigger puncher here? Are we going by knockouts, or are we going by whose punches? Like, I guess like if you want to ask like who would you rather? Nobody wants to get punched by either guy, but who would you rather not get
Right.
punched by?
Yeah.
And I guess
Yeah.
that's seems like
Yeah.
an easy question to ask, but
Yeah.
man, it's there's a lot, man, and I know the thing where Errol Spence that gets brought up naturally again, and it's hard to like ignore, but
Yeah.
obviously the stuff
Right.
that's gone on outside the ring, in the
The
last two
elephant.
three
Yeah.
years,
Right.
beyond the accident, the eye surgery. Now he
Yeah.
did fight after that.
I know.
The eye
Twice.
surgery he fought once after.
Once. Right. Was hit.
Um,
Was hit. But
yeah,
not
against
the
who?
same as Craw.
Yeah,
Obviously.
yeah, and I'll say the one. if there's one thing that like has concerned me as it concerns Errol Spence is real, and I've said this from the very beginning, man. It's like he's been out the ring like 16 months.
Yeah,
And
that hasn't been talked about a lot.
not
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
like
I didn't
not
really hear nobody
much.
bring it up.
So, man, I think they both dudes have trained hard. I mean,
Yeah,
they've had to. I mean, this is they both know what's in store.
yeah,
Um, man, do you wanna hop off the cliff
yeah.
and give me your prediction with this, or is it like or
I
do
wanna
you have
save
one?
you and I. I want you and I to save our predictions. Remember, we wanna go. I wanna do something different this go around. I wanna go
Oh,
live.
because you tomorrow, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
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 I
yeah.
wanna
Okay,
be out at the MGM to set up, and I wanna drop it.
okay, let's do
Yeah,
that then. But let
we'll do
me,
that.
I'll give, and I'll hand it to you, and
Yeah,
I'll just give you my quick keys.
yeah. This is
Uh,
more of we want to really build this and give it its proper due. Obviously, I'm gonna be at the fight tomorrow,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
I'll be in the building, and what better place to give a prediction than where the fight's going to be? And
Right.
although you won't physically be there, you'll be
Yeah,
on the
man.
live with me. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, listen, man, there's so many variables to break down. You talked about the long reach with Bud, right? Bud is the more agile, the more fluid guy, the more athletic guy. He's got the longer reach. So you say to yourself, well, this fight should be fought from the pocket, right? Like, because he has these attributes to set traps and work from these angles. The problem, though, is that Spence is just not a reckless abandonment guy, right? So we
Hmm.
always talk about the triangle theory, and this is why you got to throw him out the window. Well, he was able to set traps for Sean Porter that Earl Spence wasn't able to do. This is true. But at the same time, Earl Spence is not going to fight Terence Crawford like he fought Sean Porter, and vice versa. Crawford's not going to do the same thing.
Right.
The one thing Spence does, we've been studying and watching this, like, and I'm sure you've been doing the same thing, watching YouTube, watching old fights, just to look for certain things.
Hmm.
And the one thing that Spence does, I don't think he get a lot of credit for, is that he does it's the jab. So he has a power jab, and it's also a range slash filler jab where he'll put the jab out there and do a gradual step back as well. If you ever notice, he'll shoot a 1-2 and then step back. Where a guy like Margarito or even like a Benavidez is coming forward more reckless abandonment, like, all right, I'm just going to keep pressing and coming forward and take whatever's coming my way. Where with Spence, I'm gonna put the jab out there. I'm still gonna press you, but everything is predicated behind the jab.
Hmm.
And to stay out of harm's way, I'm gonna muff up with my left hand. I'm gonna put the jab out there as a filler, and I'm gonna do a gradual step back so I don't get countered in the process. So this is one thing I think that sometimes get overlooked is that Spence has really good spacing the way he goes forward and he steps back. And like we talked about balance a lot. So guys like Spence, that's always like 10 toes down, although they may get court and rock with a shot, they're able to. First of all, he's strong as an ox, right? Because he's fighting. Let's just keep it a bean. Is he fighting in a weight class he probably technically shouldn't be fighting in? So, not to get off track, Roy Jones said something. It didn't get a lot of press, though. I was shocked. He said if he fought today, he probably could still fight at super middleweight. Because he said the weight cut, the way these guys are cutting weight now, is so different from the way it used to be. Like the mere fact that Earl Spence spent his whole career at welterweight is insane to me. Like I don't even know how that's even like possible. Because when you and I grew up, that was unheard of. Even guys that were smaller than him moved up by now.
Hmm.
But I do think that though he's been off 15 months. You can't like time is time at the end of the day. And at some point, the weight has to show up. Now, maybe it won't show up for this fight. I don't know. But at some point, a guy, you look how big he is, and he's like, how is he making welterweight? Like, how is he still making 147? And you factor that in with a guy who's such a sharp. See, this is the thing about this fight too, that's different from anybody that Errol Spence ever fought, is that Crawford is such a crisp counterpuncher. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and now we can get into stances. Southpaw stance. What are they vulnerable to? The over the top right. Crawford. What is one of Crawford's signature punches? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's boxing 101. It got nothing to do with this. Is how it always been. Now on the flip side, when Crawford switch hits to southpaw, the straight left hand is your most vulnerable punch. Is the straight left hand. So it's some variables here that both fighters got to be careful with. I think that Crawford, this is one fight here I wouldn't play around with switching a lot. And we
Yeah.
circle back to that Cotto Margarito fight. I feel like the longer uh, Crawford gives Spence opportunities. See, Spence is a sneaky count. Like he has sneaky counter punching ability, within himself. Where you might be getting two sharp shots off, and then he's catching you with a body shot in the process. And this is you talk about that breakdown factor. That's
Mm-hmm.
how he starts to break guys down. And then the next thing you know, you see Crawford kind of going off the back foot and starting to slow down a little bit. You're like, why he's not throwing as much? And, we saw this in the Triple G and Canelo fight too. And it's like, you starting to go on the back foot, like, oh, like I didn't even see what Crawford looked like he was winning the fight, but losing the war in the process. I personally think for Crawford to win this fight, he got to back Errol Spence up. I think he got to be first. He got to dictate the pace. And I feel like in order for him to win this fight, he got to push Errol Spence backwards. I do not think he can win this fight back foot and lateral movement all night because the 3 minutes of every round, like Earl Spence never stops. He's probably the closest thing to Hagler's that we saw of this generation, especially him being a welterweight, even though Hagler was a middleweight. He just don't, he arms, choke. He's constantly pressing. Even if it don't look like nothing happened, is going on, this stuff tires you out, So I think that Crawford definitely gotta, be first, put a jab in his face, and most importantly, he has to find his way to Earl Spence body to slow the train down. You just gotta find a way to disrupt and slow it down. And then I'm gonna pass it back to you, and I want to get your opinion on this. The biggest elephant in the room is the clinching. This is always where fights are won and lost. You go back to the Benavidez and Caleb Plant fight. Now, Caleb was able to survive, but the one thing Brid told me was he did not know Benavidez was that good of an inside fighter. Remember, Benavidez was holding on to Plant,
Mm-hmm.
grabbing, punching him because that stuff wears and tire guys out. So Crawford, that's not really his style to fight like that. Crawford can fight inside, but he's not a grab and hold guy. Where
Right.
Spence, that's more what he does. He'll like the Ocampo fight. They just put up a clip on the Showtime page, and you saw in one of the videos, Steve Smoger was standing way over there, and he clenched Ocampo's arm and was punching him in his back. So all that type of stuff you got to watch out for. But having that wrestling pedigree.
No, I was just gonna
Remember
get to
Floyd? Remember
that.
Floyd back in the day when they tried to do that? Remember they tried to bully Floyd, and Floyd would grab him and hold you still, and then
Yeah.
that kind of went out the window.
And they're like, oh,
So
he's a little stronger than we thought.
that's what I'm saying. Ward is another one. He said it. He said people think I'm weak until they get in the ring with me,
Yeah.
or I'm slow. He used to say too.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be interesting too because I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, like Bud has the wrestling background. We've seen him grapple with like these Ukrainian like
he's
amateurs.
strong as hell.
So is he strong, man? And I think sometimes the bigger guy isn't necessarily has the most strength. He may be the
Right.
bigger, naturally
It's a
bigger
great point.
guy,
It's a good point.
but
Right.
I mean, and I think we're gonna find we may find that out, Saturday night, man. And I think Crawford for sure needs to not let this fight like start to coast like into the fourth and fifth round, and you're kind of behind.
You're behind. Yeah, because he's not going to win a decision
Right,
like that.
right, and
Yeah,
I think he has to kind of the thing is, I feel Spence is gonna start this fight maybe more aggressive than I don't know about like going like all Martin Hagler to Hearns, but I think he's
yeah. I
gonna
don't think
start
we're getting
aggressive
that, but
because
I got what you're saying. Yeah,
but I think they know like Crawford takes time, and in order for them to really like stack the points up, they have to kind of uh, get him in a situation where he's not having time to think, which comes into again the pressuring and the volume punching, and can he do this again? And this is where this is why I'm very interested to see the weigh-ins tomorrow because
that's why I want to
um
wait and see. I'm like really,
yeah,
yeah,
because this could turn into you gotta you got you're gonna fight the long game and just wear Bud down,
right.
or depending if this weight cut was hard again. This is
Yeah,
16 months. What
yeah,
was he weighing for 16 months, for 15, 14 months prior? A lot of things to consider, but it's the question of whether you're going to be able to do this for the long haul, or you got 5, 6 rounds to do what you got to do. Because I'm
right.
telling you, and you made a good point. There comes a time where, and it's not every fighter, but you like certain guys that you see that are literally like busting out of the cocoon.
Yeah,
Like Spence has been there at this point, and it's like you really touched on
yeah,
something. It's like
yeah,
whether or not this fight is going to be that culmination. I would hope it wouldn't be, for the sake of this being a great fight, and it
yeah,
goes. But it's just, man, there's a lot of what ifs that we're not gonna know till maybe either tomorrow or Saturday night. But I just think Spence has to start early. He needs to get aggressive early.
yeah.
And like I said, he needs to make Crawford not think, or not be able to think quick enough. But on the flip side, I think I agree. Like I think Crawford at a point in the fight has to try to make and Spence go back.
Yeah,
But I think Crawford's MO, and it's usually his MO, is like they both do, but Crawford's MO kind of seems like he's kind of taking the data down, and he sets traps.
yeah,
So Spence has to be careful with that too, and not
yeah.
necessarily get
Overcommit.
too aggressive,
Yeah,
but
overcommitting.
just
That's what I was saying. Yep. That the overcommitting part is where I think that Bud is banking on. But again, when you're see, this is the thing. There's there's calculated measure. There's a calculated measured approach to the weight. Like Hagler. Like Hagler was a relentless pressure fighter, but it was movement. It was a jab that he a lot of times people was missing, but you only saw the stuff that came after that. But it was
yeah,
never like he was never like on a straight line and to be had like again, I go back to guys like Chavez and obviously, we brought up Margarito, Julian Jackson type where these guys was just coming straight forward just trying to bomb you out, and against a counterpuncher like a Bud Crawford or Ray Leonard or whoever, Mike McCollum, like what he was able to do with you fall right into the Lions den at that point when you do that. And I think that the respect that Spence has for Crawford and vice versa, like I know he said he's going to step, but how much is he going to step? Because if he steps too much, he'll walk right into a shot.
hmm
So it's just like, you know, and then it's pacing yourself.
yeah.
They know
That's the
that,
big thing there. That's
yeah,
the big
because
thing, is the
this
pacing.
fight, you could be looking at a stretch from the 8th to the 12th round with hell break out. Like
Right.
Brad said something that was really profound. He said, one of these two fighters are going to have to go to that dark place. Who's willing to go there? Like basically, like that's what makes this unique. Where this isn't Floyd or Roy Jones or Pernell Whitaker, where those three names that I brought up, you're never going to see them in the I'm going all out
Nah, these
toe to
two
toe,
are
like
like that. Right. These two are.
They now too, and it doesn't make listen. It's all about styles. It
Yeah,
doesn't make like Floyd or Purnell or Roy like they was cowards. It's just that they
that
were
was the
Roy.
style.
Roy
Yeah,
was an offensive fighter, minded fighter, but he was a guy that could do it because he beat his offense was his defense.
yeah,
People were so scared to be countered by that speed, they just didn't throw punches. They didn't commit as much. Where Floyd and Purnell, people did throw punches to get them, but they got countered in time. So it's like, so it's so many parallels out there too, right? Because I always think about the Canelo and Triple G fight too, where I guess Canelo would be Bud and Triple G would be Errol Spence. Where in that second fight, and I remember looking at Rada Die and just shocked how he was he was backing Triple G up. Like I was just in utter shock how he was able to back him up. So, that's the key. And again, even when you go to Floyd, when he did the Canelo, Purnell, when he did the Chavez, like the Chavez Purnell fight, if people really watched that fight, that was the first time Chavez ever took a step backwards in a fight. like,
yeah.
against Purnell, who was supposed to be this finesse, because you know why they did that? And this guy didn't understand what I was saying. He was like, well, what do you mean uh, Floyd couldn't fight off the back foot? I said, you misunderstanding what I'm saying. Floyd understood that doing that takes a lot of energy. It tires you up. So why am I'm going to go backwards all night against a guy that's never going to stop? So therefore, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make him go backwards versus me having to do that. Again, Roy was able to do that because he was just touched by the gods with athleticism.
Athleticism. Yeah,
Yeah, so he could literally fight a style where he's moving all over the place. You could follow him around a ring all night, and you would get timed mercifully. You know what I'm saying?
back.
So, but and remember, he's 35 years old as well, and going off the because there's some people out there that got this thing like, well, he's just going back foot all night and just wait for some traps. like that's some of that is easier said than done because it's like, what if the trap never come and you constantly getting touched on and working backwards all night?
and,
I just don't think
and
Bud fight like that.
yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah, and the thing with and the thing, much of like Crawford's deep, much of his counter shots, like you made a point, he's an offensive minded guy.
yeah,
So a lot of his counters are all predicated upon like the stuff that he's setting up.
yeah.
He'll counter you like as far as like you throwing that first shot, but like Sean Porter made a big point. He was like the thing with Terence Crawford is he knows how to fight he knows how to throw within the exchange. He's
I was getting
really
ready to
good
say,
at
yeah,
it.
that's where he's good at. Yeah. In
So
range, being in range. We always talk
being
about
in
range.
range, and I think
He's
that's
in.
going to be yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be key for him.
Again, for Crawford, it's one two like it's range and then it's subtle footwork out the way because another fight we can go to is again with the I felt like with the Colo and Margarito fight again the hand reps just messed this whole conversation up. But we'll just stay with context. Where when you stay on a line too long, countering because Colo is a body puncher, and I remember leading up to that fight, I was like because Colo sits on all his shots, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you sit on punches, you're stationary a lot longer than you need to be. And against a guy like Margarito who wants you to sit on your punches, so that gives him an opening and an opportunity. Where a guy like Crawford's a lot more elusive. Where although he
Right.
may sit on his shots, he's not stationary. Like all right, I'm hitting and then I'm hitting,
Right.
moving, constantly on the move. And I just
Right.
think that's kind of the mindset that it has to be. For Spence, you just gotta keep him still with the sink and pull jab that you got. Like
Yeah.
but we'll give our predictions. But before we wrap up, though, I do want to. I just can't believe it. This is crazy. That this is really happening. Like I was like, it was a couple things I said when I see the first all access. I know. Well, first, uh, you know, it be it's it being announced was huge. Then it was
Yeah.
the all access. And then when you start seeing the promos, and then it was like, all right, the first world press conference, which was tonight. I mean, the final press conference. Now tomorrow's the final straw, the weigh-in. Then it's like, all right, the ring introduction. It's all these steps, but bro, it's just
It's
crazy
just
that
yeah, man. It's just we're here, man. It's like this is, and really, if you think about it too, this is the culmination of this era of the welterweight division, man. This is
It,
it.
it, it,
Like,
it's bittersweet. I'm gonna tell you why. Because after this, obviously you got Boots, but again, we run back into that conversation of contempt. Steve, for sports to be great, I mean, especially this sport, boxing, unlike any other sport, you have to have a contemporary, right? You have
yes.
to have a rival. It's how it works because unfortunately the way boxing worked, and we speaking of Roy Jones, that's what happened to a large part of his career. Like once he beat the guys he was supposed, it was weird timing because people were like, oh, well, they're all the same age, but Nard came along slower than them, right? He's
Yeah.
older than them, but he came along slower.
Yeah.
Roy uh, and James Fort, but then their career went completely in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
You know, and then you had Gerald McCullough. Unfortunately, tragic situation happened with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they never got a chance to mix it up. So all these woulda, coulda, shouldas for Rory just unfortunately never went his way. So it's like he had this good career, and then all of a sudden a guy like Tarver comes along and then derails everything, right?
Yep.
You know, not that it derailed his career. I'm just saying it derailed his run, his reign. So then
Hmm.
you fast forward to all these years now. All the fights that Spence had, the fights, potential fights Bud could have had, all people cared about was them two fighting each other. That was
Yeah.
it.
Right.
That was it. So, you know, and then you got Boots, like I said, you know, Virgil Ortiz. Again, these are unfortunate situations, which would have been a great, you know,
Yeah.
but he's, you know,
Well, they're
dealing
saying
with
if he
whatever.
returns, he's going to 154.
Yeah,
So
he's going. That's what I was saying. So, if you know, from Boots, you start thinking and looking like, well, damn, like, you
what
know,
does it look like?
obviously,
Yeah, man.
obviously, you're going to get these titles because you know you never know. Something might be down the pipe we missing. Somebody could move up. The way boxing work, you don't know what they come up with. You know, but you know we'll see how that go. But I just wanted to just say again that it's a little bittersweet because we know this is the end, the ending of our era. You know, no
Yeah.
matter how the fight turn out. So you know we'll wait and see. But Tuesday, last Tuesday, over in Japan. Stephen Fulton versus Inoue, the super bantamweight phenom, versus the slick technical Philadelphian Stephen Fulton, world champion. You know, was a 4-1 underdog. I thought I heard. I didn't know that until
I didn't
after.
see what the odds were.
Yeah, so he apparently, I was going to say 50. Well, in the boxing community, it was a 50-50 fight. You know, the money on Inoue, I think, had to do with probably, popularity. You know, a lot of more people know who he is and all his fights ins and knockouts. So, you know, you factor that in, and Fulton had to go to Japan. You know, it was a whole ordeal with that. So, but long story short, Tuesday morning, nobody anticipated what took place. You know, uh, I mean, woof, crazy.
Yeah.
Totally thrown off guard, you know.
It's one thing. Like, I talked to people that said that they picked Inoue by knockout, and look, I mean, it's hard to
Yeah,
you know you know say, yeah, well, yeah, but he's going up in weight, and this guy's Fulton's like a really good fighter, and he's the bigger, quote unquote better boxer. But I think it's the way Inoue went about winning this fight from the very beginning, just utilizing the jab, throwing that shotgun jab to the stomach, like practically through the night. And it's just, it's funny, man. Like we mentioned Bob, Bob, he's been in this business for a very long time, man. And, the way Inoue, um, I mean, he pitched a shutout, and
yeah,
ended it with a home run.
yeah,
So I just think again, like Inoue showed a lot of skill in this fight, man, and I've been one that has been saying that, like, I haven't been one of these people saying he's, oh man, he's number one, and da, da, da. And look,
right,
if you have him, if you have him number
Yeah,
one at
some
least
people
until
believe that.
Saturday,
Yeah.
you know,
Some
if you
people
have him to,
believe that he should be number one over Spence and Crawford. I don't see how that could be, but
I I
yeah,
and this is a simple answer. The
yeah.
reason the winner Saturday should be pound for pound number one is because of
Who
who
they're fighting.
ultimately they'd be beating.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and
That's
no
a
disrespect to Inoue, but he's not fought or beaten anybody of the caliber of either of the guys fighting Saturday night.
right.
No disrespect
No,
at
no, no,
all.
no, 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 no. I understand what you're saying. It's just it's and it's longevity too. Like I mean, these two guys, but especially for Bud, who's a multi-divisional so to be a unifying disputed champion twice in two different divisions,
Right,
that's like it's
right,
unheard of. Like,
right.
and then like you said, like who he's beating, they're anyway in Fulton's story is still being told. Obviously, as you know, like we close with people that's connected to Fulton's camp. And shout out to those guys for going over there. And he still got a lot of career left. When this is, speaking to James, only I put a post up today. Look, this happens.
Yeah.
In boxing, we seen it. You and I, we thought we was getting one thing and got sold another thing. And it's just, you know, um, you go back to guys like Salvador Sanchez, who fought Wilfredo Gomez and moved up in weight and jumped all over him. So
Mhm.
special talents like this come along every generation. Pacquiao was the last one. The thing about anyway, I just want to say, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, it's not just the speed and power. He actually is technical.
Yeah.
He's like a Lomachenko with more power, which is like crazy. Like Lomo knocked people out. He systematically broke you down. Well, in a way, is a power puncher, but he's technical. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of it's interesting because, like, I look at a guy like Drew McCullough, right? Who was a very technically sound fighter, but he had power. He had power
Just
punching
ridiculous
ability.
power. Yeah, yeah.
Power punching. He threw a liver shot to the body like no other, right?
Hmm.
And I call them get out of jail free cards. When you can outbox somebody and outpunch them,
Yeah.
that's a deadly force. But like you say, he was all the different jab variations, the way he was circling, he clinched and he was doing what we was talking about, clinching, punching
Yeah.
off. Because the thing about clinching, and somebody had asked me on a live the other day, like, why do I put so much emphasis in it? Because it's a first of all, it's like grits, right? You can eat grits with anything. That's how clinching it does so much. It can help you take. You could get a break and get get your legs back from being
Right.
hit with the
Yeah, yeah.
shot. You might just be tired. It's also a rhythm disruptor. You can disrupt
Right.
an onslaught by tying somebody up.
Right.
It also tires the guy out because you're leaning your body on him. You're
Hmm.
able to get off sneaky. That's why they call them rat. You're sneaking punches in that are probably borderline illegal. You're punching guys in the back of their head, in their back. So you're able to do all this stuff and this physically wear a guy down. So I saw in that fight, again, with the first clinch. And what I noticed how strong Inoue was, and it like threw me off. And I'm like, well, this is interesting because the way I had the fight going in is that the first clinch, Fulton was going to be able to spin and turn
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
way. So what that did was, and before we close out, I just want to get your opinion on how far you think this can go.
yeah. As far as Inoue is concerned, like,
Yeah, how far does this go up?
I mean, look, man. I mean, I don't think we're gonna see like him go to welterweight or anything
No,
like
no,
that. I mean, I
definitely not.
think he's probably capped at. Oh man, I'm saying this now, and I could be wrong, but I think 100, even 126. It's like you're fighting. I always tell people when you're going up in weight, you're going to fight guys that, granted, like let's say you're going to fight guys that are at 126, but those guys are really like 130,
Right,
35 guys.
right.
So the fight to me that interests me out of all of them potentially is him and Robeson Ramirez. Um, and that would, I would assume, take place. He'd have to go back up in weight or
You
go
would have
up
to
in
go.
weight again,
You would,
featherweight.
yeah. Now,
I
you have to go. You have to move
Yeah,
up 4 pounds.
Yeah.
So let me throw this name out there at you because somebody, shout out to moment to Ruben, who I had on the live before. He brought up a name that I didn't think about. Now, this will require this particular fighter getting paid a lot of money for this to happen. What do you think about him and Lomachenko?
I
Only reason
mean,
I'm asking
like,
because you can get Loma to move down and wait if need be. To meet
yeah,
him
I
somewhere.
mean, I don't know, man, because it's I guess it's really it always it's always money, right? Like
That's what it
money is always everything, right?
and you
But I
can never say
guess
never because
yeah,
stuff just happens in here, you know?
of course. I mean, look,
Yeah.
we're getting Tyson Fury and another and a UFC and former UFC heavyweight champion.
And look,
Like
if I
so
would have
it's
told you, look, how about this, Roberto? If I would have told you earlier this year, yeah, Jamel Charlo's fighting Canelo, you would be like,
Canelo,
well,
yeah,
how the
right.
hell did
Who
that
knows,
happen?
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think again, and this goes back to Bob because Bob makes the decisions, right? If you're Bob in this scenario, do you make a Lomachenko Shakur fight or do you suck Lomachenko to 130? Nah, I don't want to say suck down because I mean I
I
think
know. I
Lomachenko
mean,
would make 130.
yeah.
Um, I don't know, man. Like, who know? Look. What did we talk
Cash
about
out.
earlier?
All right, listen. Let me just rephrase the scenario. A year went by. He has no fight. He he's looking for a fight. He doesn't want the Shakur fight. Maybe the money's not right. He knows he's going to lose, and because let's face it, that's a bad fight for Lomachenko. Because everything that was
It is.
people thought was going to happen in the Haney fight is going to happen to a whole different power, in that fight. So if you Lomachenko, you're like, all right, well, this is a smaller guy. I can make 130 in my sleep easily. And you're gonna have to, again. What are you willing? How much does it mean to you?
Here's the interesting thing, though, and I just thought about this. This would be Lomachenko having again another 122 pounder come to 130,
How about that? Yeah,
but
how about that?
it's a little different.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm
No,
like
but
just
no,
to
no, no, no. But I'm glad that's a good reference point because when you have these conversations, it happened before,
yeah,
right? That's what I'm saying. Even though it was crazy when it happened, but it did happen.
it did
That's the thing
happen.
about boxing. People got to understand. Like I see a lot of younger fans. They don't realize that you and I, we done seen it all. So nothing surprises us. Like
It's
when
of course.
I got
It's
a chance to see Pacquiao go from where he came from to welterweight. So
and we
nothing
talk
will
and
shock me ever again.
yeah, and we talked about it like when Pacquiao De La Hoya was announced, people were like, "What? Huh? Like you, me, everybody." And look what happened. Again, there's intangibles involved, but like, it's listen, man. Like Bob, what did we say leading up to? Bob rarely makes mistakes, man. So it's just
Yo,
really, I think
that's
if it's
crazy.
worth his while, they'll do it. If it's worth Lomachenko's while, they'll because
Well,
I think about it too. Like he's gonna become undisputed again against
yeah,
this dude Tapalis, from the
yeah.
Philippines. So do you go to 126 and campaign there, or do you hop up two weight classes and Bob, tells Loma, hey man,
I,
look,
I think before you do that, you got to go to 126 first.
yeah,
You gotta test that water. And if you're able to beat a Ramirez who's an Olympian the way you beat Fulton, then I think people are gonna be like, okay,
yeah,
because
that's, I mean, yeah,
it sells it better. Because
yeah,
now you did it twice against two world class fighters. So
yeah.
now and it's all and also gives confidence for in a way in his people. Like, all right, well, let's try it one more time.
Try it. Let's try it.
If
Yeah,
it don't
let's try
work,
it.
we'll get
And
paid
there'll
a
be
lot and we'll come back down.
and that's the thing, man. Like fighting Lomachenko, like whatever version of Lomachenko that becomes at 130, like let's say a year and change from now. I mean, we know how this sport goes. When these fighters go up in weight, for the most part, you got to be be mindful who you're fighting, and it's like in no ways. And it's what I try to explain to somebody today. Like, I get the comparison with Pacquiao. He would have moved up a lot of weight, but in no way smaller than Pacquiao.
No, he's actually, and it's a different style too. Like
And it's a
Pacquiao was
different style. Yeah.
more, he was way more explosive with one punch.
Yeah.
Where Inoue is working towards breaking
Right.
you down.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Where Pacquiao was just, he's getting his head knocked off, boxing his head boxed off, and the next thing you know, you're getting caught with a straight left hand and you're going to sleep.
You're going to
So
see
that was
it.
the, he had like Mike Tyson one punch knockout power.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess we'll
uh,
see with him, man. I mean,
yeah.
listen, he's the goods. Like when
Well,
people,
no. That right now we're just having fun. Obviously, he has a fight coming up in his own weight class, and then this is all 2-3 years down the line conversation.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
I don't. Yeah, but he's definitely gonna be there. Like, no ways. Anybody that was criticizing him as far as like
oh no, I
he's
was
now
one. I raised my hand. I mean, I'm a believer. Like, wow, But all right,
he's
man. So
well tomorrow.
tomorrow, bro,
we'll give our predictions, and then
I'll
it's gonna be
I'll
what
be
it's gonna
hitting
be.
you. I'm running. Yo, did they say what time the weigh-ins going down?
I mean, I'm
Traditionally, what
thinking
time has it been?
6:53. I want to say 3 p.m. East, like your guy, West Coast
Okay.
time. But I would think you got to be there like an hour and change
Oh,
before
hell
that,
yeah.
or even
You
earlier.
saw the day how chaotic it was. Yeah, hell yeah.
Oh man, yo,
Yeah.
it's gonna be bonkers tomorrow, man. So, but any case, safe trip, man. Like
Appreciate it.
we'll touch base tomorrow.
All right, peace. One.
All right, man. One.